Who is James? What is your character James dealing with in the series?
James is dealing with a lot. It's a lot of internal grief, right? He felt that he was gonna start his life, you know, with the rest of his life with someone, and to only have a short amount of time with that person, and then lose her tragically. It's it eats at him, right? It's he needs to find ways to motivate himself. You know, he needs to be okay. So he's dealing with a lot of internal things that he doesn't know how to cope with. Right? He doesn't have the motivation to eat or to even really live. To find a way to keep going forward. So he's dealing with so much with no outlet at that time prior to the grief share.
Taking a step back, what did you like most about the script of Going Home as you were reading through it and reading through James?
My first kind of view of the script was the audition sides, right? And so you get audition sides, and as my career advances, you get them, and some of them you kind of take a little longer to connect to, right? You take a little longer to find yourself in the character and then go through the audition process. But once James came across my email, I should say, not my desk anymore, but it was so moving in the first, just from the first read. I already felt internally things working for me. I felt what he was going through because in that moment in my life I was going through similar things, and I just didn't know. That's why me and James are I mean, obviously we're one, but from the first initial read, I didn't know that I had pain. I had trauma. I had grief probably that I hadn't explored, and so reading that and just getting it out there, it was just, yeah, I loved it. Right, I wanted more of it. And then when you go through the audition process, you're like, well, I hope I get it, and I kind of let it go and pray, right? But a couple months later, I my agent informed me that I had booked a role, and I was ecstatic. But it's nice because I've never booked a TV show before, so I got the first episode, second episode, third episode, and the fifth episode, and so it was cool to just kind of dive right in and just read it. And from reading the script in its entirety, it's so moving, and you can see how the characters go on this journey, and they're so gentle with each other. And and I think that I mean it's such a heartfelt script to read. Its initial read, and it's something that I just kept reading it and reading it, and I find myself crying multiple times throughout the reads. So
You're willing to share what that personal connection is that you had with James, your character?
yeah, yeah, of course. So I had lost my aunt in COVID, during COVID. Not to COVID. I lost her to excuse me. I lost her to breast cancer. And at the time, I was there. I was there in Spokane, Washington. Actually, I was there, and I was in the house, and I remember we were downstairs, me, my mom, and my uncle, and then all of a sudden my cousin started screaming and said that she was gone. And I remember going up there, and I didn't. I saw her, and it was kind of that thing of I feel with Gina's character. Like I didn't cry initially at first, right? And it was kind of like a shock and awe, like I was frozen. And my mom was hysterical. That was her sister, and my uncle was in this state of euphoria, kind of like he or hysteria. He didn't really know what to do, right? He was trying to still talk to her, and so I'm trying to take all that in. Um, and then this comes across, James's story, and I think that always lingered within me, right? And also too, just a lot of pent up grief, pent up damage that I've had as myself, and that's why I think playing a character like James is so important for artists like me, because it's a vessel that not everybody can do, right? And so I think it's so important for me to tell James's story and connect with it and share it with the world, so that anybody that that watches it knows that, okay, you know, I can feel this way, and it's okay to feel this way, or it's okay to feel however you want to feel.
So with that, your character James goes through Grief Share, which is a program that a lot of churches utilize to help people going through grief. What were the grief share scenes like for you, and how do they impact you personally?
Well, first of all, all the other actors, just being in that environment and being and seeing other people tell their characters' stories was so impactful for me. Watching Cynthia and watching Chris, the leads go through their, especially Chris going through his sort of story that you'll see later on. Um, just sitting there and you feel like it's such a safe space, right? Like you feel like you can actually open up your heart and be vulnerable, which is insanely scary, right? But that was the character, what James was going through, right? What all these characters were going through is we all just met each other for the first time at this grief share meeting, and we're opening our hearts, and whether it's pain, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, we're sharing it because we feel safe, right? And I think that's what the grief share is, and I think that's so important, for anybody that watches the show or anybody that's going through something, just to be in a space, in an environment that makes you feel safe. And Katie, I mean, oh my gosh, she, not only as an artist, as a human, made me feel so safe, and made me feel like she was leading the grief share group, and I just felt like I could just open up to her, like I could just talk to her, right? You always take something away from that, and I always take the grief share. I kept the grief share book, so it's interesting. I was talking to my mother the other day, and I was saying, after this interview, I'd like to send you the book, because I think it might help her go through whatever she's kind of going through, and I don't think that she's fully accepted it. So I think, like, I will take something away from it always, and hopefully I can share it through with my family.
You've kind of touched on it in all your answers, but why is a show like Going Home so important?
It's extremely gentle, um, but it's gentle in being fun, right? Like, Janie's character, she says, in her social media videos, a good death, right? And when you think about that, it terrifies. I mean, it terrifies, maybe half or 90% of people, right? But to to go through something like that and know that you'll be okay, essentially, or you'll have a connection with somebody before you go, right? Again, it's all back to opening up and being vulnerable, right? In the last moments of your life, these hospice care workers, which, I mean, I think from the show you'll learn that hospice care workers, I mean, they go through this experience every day, right? Like, I think, in season 2, in the first episode, she's talking about the ER a lot, right? Like, we see maybe 1 in 1,000. It's like, well, we see this almost every day, right? And I think it's just, you gain such a respect for hospice care workers that I don't think has ever been shown before. And then how they care, and how they care not only for the person going through, their near death, but the families. And I think that's important too, because going back to what I said earlier, we didn't, coming from where I come from, my family, we really didn't have an outlet, right? We would bottle it all up, and maybe if my aunt chose to spend her final days in the house, she chose not to do hospice, but, um, I mean, I could see why people do it, right? And I think that's important, um, for anybody that watches the show, or yeah, for sure.
So we have a show that has a difficult topic, death, every week. How do you come away? How does the show make it entertaining and even more so inspiring when you watch it? What is it about the writing? What is it about the acting that inspires people?
The writing, for sure. Shout out to Dan, right? I wouldn't be here without Dan. I mean, he's an incredible human. I texted him, and I just said thank you so much for allowing me to have an opportunity, right? Not only my first TV show, but, an opportunity to play James was so humbling and so gifting. Um, the writing is so true to characters, and I think the character's journey is that you see is so important, and I think the grief share is really important for people moving forward, because when you watch the show, whatever you're kind of going through, it kind of gives you an outlet to cry. It kind of it just has that emotional effect on you. And I think not only for people that are older, but I think it's really important, and I think the grief share meeting touches on that, to show the different walks of life, right? To show people of my age, or Stu's age, or Gina's age, or Paula's age, or Sherry's age, excuse me. Especially for me, like I had mentioned, I didn't have an outlet, right? So if I didn't have an outlet, there's many other people that don't have an outlet, right? And I think especially too, and I'm a big believer in men's mental health, and I'm a big supporter of it, because for me, uh, I didn't, like I said, I didn't have anybody I could talk to. I didn't have a safe space. So I think with the grief share with the younger people too, and that's why I think Janie's character is really important, not only from the social media aspect, but she brings such a young face to something, so it seems so old, right? Like you always see like old people kind of go through it, but no, I mean it can happen to anybody. You know, I mean, I know people that lose their dog, right? And they can't physically move. They're physically sick. So to have an outlet, and I think that that's what's so important with the show and so inspiring, is because the characters, you know, you get to see them from all walks of life, right? And the writing is so true to handle these situations with care.
Hey, real quick, go through that, just that the difference of going through it as yourself and then as James.
Well, going through it as myself, you know, reading it as Ramsey, I really think of my mother, right? I grew up with my mother, and it's like, in order for Ramsey to be okay, I need to admit what's wrong. So then when I go through it as James, in order for James to be okay, he needs to admit what's wrong, right? He needs to talk about how he feels about the death of his wife. I mean, like I had mentioned earlier, to to get to the point where you're going to marry somebody at such a young age and spend, 60 years with this person, hopefully, right? Um, and to have her taken away from you within a year is I can't imagine, but I can pile up on my grief. So there was a lot of angry notes through James, but there was a lot of sadness too, right? And as Ramsey, I think, just going through, the loss of my aunt and the loss of my grandma, and then it was interesting too that I went back to the grief share book when I lost my grandpa, because I had moved to Los Angeles. He was 103 years old, 102 years old. He would have been 103, excuse me. He died December 26th. And I remember my mom texted me, and it just, because I wasn't there, you know, it, I was like, man, this sucks, right? But I didn't cry. I didn't have emotion. And then his funeral was coming up, but I couldn't make the funeral because I was on set. And I was like, I can push it. I can talk to them. And my mom was like, no, it'll be okay, And so I actually picked up the book and went through it again. And I was like, why am I not crying, right? Why am I not feeling this? And then it just pops up out of nowhere randomly. I was doing, an acting class. I was doing a scene, or a monologue, and as the character, I had to write a eulogy, right? And I went back and looked at my grandpa's. And once I looked at that, realizing that he's been gone, that it sort of started clicking for me and stirring for me, right? Your emotions, and that's okay. That's okay to feel that way. So I go back to it periodically, as Ramsey, and it's therapeutic, right? And I read the note too, the note that I had wrote to myself, to God, is therapeutic as well. So there's not much differences. There's a lot more similarities. Going through it as Ramsey as James. It's just sometimes, depending on the day, you could be angry, and sometimes you can be sad, and sometimes you can feel nothing, and sometimes but to realize, and that's what I think the show does beautifully, is that it's okay. Everybody's different, right? And everybody grieves different.
So all in all, it's been a good impact, a good opportunity to be part of going home.
Oh, it's been it's been an amazing opportunity, and I'd love to keep doing it. But regardless, the show, I can't wait for episode 2. Right? I'm kind of antsy, just like everybody else. It's been it's been a blessing in my life. Not only as the show's success, but as my own individual self. I remember Friday, just being so excited to see all your hard work and all your dedication and all Dan's hard work, and all the other actors, their hard work and dedication all come to light. It just brings a big smile to my face, and it's something that I'm going to cherish for a very long time, because it's not only my first opportunity, but to be on a show as impactful as this is such a blessing. I've been going through things in my own personal life that as an artist, as a human, you just kind of go through, but you wake up every day and you put one foot in front of the other, right? And Saturday, or I was like, you know what, I gotta go get my dry cleaning, right? I don't know what it is, I just gotta go get it. And it was ready early, so anyway, so it's down the street. I was like, I don't want to do this, so I go, I get it, and I walk in, and he gives me a phone number, and so I give him my phone number. And I'm looking down the whole time. I really don't make eye contact. I just, it was one of those moods that I was in. And I'm getting ready to pay, and the payment doesn't pop up on the credit card machine. And I look at him, and he looks me dead in my eyes. This complete stranger that I have never seen, actually. I've never seen him before at that laundromat. And I go down there, or the dry cleaners. I go down there all the time, and I've never seen this guy, ever. And he looks me in my eyes, and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I was so taken back by that, and I was like, "Wait, what? Yeah, I'm fine." That's kind of the standard answer. And he just said, "No, no, you're not. Like, are you okay?" And I'm not ashamed to admit this, but crying in the middle of a dry cleaners isn't really how I really wanted to spend my Saturday, to a complete stranger. And then I just kind of was like, if this guy can see something that's going on in my life, then I'll talk to him about it, because I think I need to explore whatever this is. And we talked for probably 15, 20 minutes. And at the end, he just said, whatever you're going through, whatever it is, everything's going to be okay. And for a complete stranger to say that to me was like, it changed the course. I don't know what it did, but it changed something in me that day. And I've been happy ever since.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so important about, the show, and especially the grief share group, because who knows, right? If a stranger, if you're in this meeting and you could be going through, the ringer, and all someone says to you is, "Are you okay? Do you want to talk about it?" Or, "I'm here for you." Just one thing could lead you to open up, and to let that release, and have that release and feel okay again. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. Um, and yeah, once it happened, I said, this is no coincidence, right? I'm a big believer in things happen for a reason. So I was excited to share that little story here.
Last question.
Hmm.
If somebody has not seen Going Home, what would you say to encourage them to watch this program?
I would say open your heart, and definitely, because people, like I just mentioned, I said I was okay when I wasn't, right? And I think open your heart, and really understand that everybody's going to lose somebody at one point, or somebody or something or whatever that they love. And to watch this show, you'll know that there's outlets. There's always outlets. And I cannot stress this enough, that, you know, whatever you're going through, whatever, there's always an outlet. And so many people don't realize that, or so many people don't want to find it. And so I think Going Home does this beautiful blend of, it's lighthearted, it's gentle, it's inspiring. You fall in love with the characters. I'm so excited to see where they go with everything. And there's a sense of love there too, you know, and I think that that's what I would tell them. You know, it's such a open your heart type show, which there aren't a lot on television nowadays and the streaming services, and I think that's what's going to draw in a lot of people to the show.